You ever get told you can't do something on your own land by someone who's not even your neighbor, just passing through? That's a special kind of madness. I'll never forget the day Susan Mitchell, president of the most ridiculous HOA you've ever heard of, showed up on my porch and gave me a formal notice to stop riding my snowmobiles on my own land. 48 hours, she said, or they'd take legal action. That's when I knew if I'd had any doubts left that Susan had finally lost whatever was left of her mind. My name's Nathan Archer. I own about 200 acres of old Vermont mountain land just outside of Stowe. It's nothing fancy, old pines, a small frozen lake, a cabin that creaks when the wind blows. The kind of place where you can breathe. You know. My great-grandfather bought this stretch back in 1947. Paid next to nothing for it when this corner of the world was still more moose than millionaires. It's been ours ever since. You might not think much of a trail winding through snowy woods, but for me, that trail is the heartbeat of my family's history. Every winter, as far back as I remember, my dad and I would fire up the snowmobiles, check the fences, feel the powder kick up behind us. Some winters, the world would go so quiet, you could hear your own heartbeat echoing off the birches right up until the engines roared to life. Those rides, that was our tradition. Hell, it was our therapy. But the thing is, that trail, my trail, is also the only decent way to get a vehicle up to Pine Summit Ski. Resort tucked on the other side of the mountain. The resort doesn't own the access road. I do. Well, technically, there's an easement agreement. My grandfather signed it with the original owners in '65. Gave them and their guests the right to cross my land to reach the lodge in exchange for ski passes and a yearly check that barely keeps up with inflation. I think I get about $3,000 a year now. Not enough to retire on, but I never cared about the money. About 5 years back, things started changing. Some big developer out of state bought the resort and decided to slap up these shiny luxury condos at the base Pine Summit Village, they called it. Sold the dream of private slopes and mountain serenity. With the condos came the HOA, and with the HOA came Susan Mitchell. I'd only met Susan twice before she marched up to my porch. That January, always in meetings about snow removal, always talking like she was the sheriff, and the mayor rolled into one. She looked the part hair so tight, you wondered how she blinked a cream-colored parka, worth more than my pickup. That day, she brought two other board members, Patricia and Margaret, like backup singers standing behind her, like they'd practiced for a hostile takeover. She barely looked at me, just said, "Mr. Archer, we need to discuss your recreational vehicle usage." I still had an axe in my hand splitting firewood, which I'd way rather have kept doing. My what? Your snowmobiles. The noise is absolutely unacceptable. Our residents expect peace, and your machines are disrupting that. Mind you, the nearest condo is half a mile away across thick woods and a frozen lake. I told her that. She insisted no, they could hear. Its sound carries, it's disturbing wildlife, it's dangerous. What if a skier gets hit? I tried to be patient for about 3 seconds. Susan, my family's been riding snowmobiles here for 70 years. You've been here 5 minutes, Patricia piped up about HOA rules. Noise pollution recreational vehicles? I stopped her. Your HOA, I said, has no jurisdiction over my property. I'm not part of your little community. This land was here long before those condos ever were. Susan just stared at me, lips pinched like she was swallowing a lemon whole. We're simply asking you to cease using snowmobiles on the trail adjacent to our property in the interest of being a good neighbor. The trail isn't adjacent to their property, it's through mine. But the real issue, I realized, was the easement road. For a quarter mile, the main road and my snowmobile trail run sort of parallel, close enough that when the condo folks drive their Range Rovers to the slopes, they see me out there enjoying myself. Let me tell you, nothing irritates people like seeing someone else happy on their own land. I said as much, asked if this was really about the noise or about them having to see me. We're upset because you're creating a nuisance, Susan said. The HOA has voted. We are formally requesting that you cease snowmobile operation, specifically on the trail visible from the easement road. If you don't, we'll take legal action. Sue for nuisance breach of peaceful enjoyment, whatever we can document. She actually handed me a folded letter, gave me 48 hours. I told her in no uncertain terms to get off my property. I may have picked up the axe again, not in a threatening way, just making a point. She said I was being unreasonable. I nearly laughed. You come to my home and tell me I can't use my own land, threaten lawsuits, and I'm the unreasonable one? They left, but not before Susan promised I'd be hearing from their attorney. They were gone maybe 5 minutes before I was on the phone with Gerald, my lawyer since I was a kid. He's the kind of guy who can calm you down just by breathing. He listened to the whole story, then said, Nathan, they can't tell you what to do on your land. The easement lets them cross nothing more. But they can still make trouble. Frivolous lawsuits are expensive to defend. He told me to document everything. And check the easement. Those old agreements sometimes have ways out. That's when I started digging through my dad's old filing cabinet, hunting for the original agreement from '65. It was yellow typed on a real typewriter. Buried in the legalese there, it was the resort, and their guests get access as long as it's for peaceful transit, and as long as they maintain the road. But here's the part that stopped me cold either side. Could terminate with 180 days notice if the other party violated the terms, including filing legal action that interferes with peaceful use and enjoyment. I called Gerald back, read him the clause. He went quiet. Nathan, if you invoke this, you cut off their only road to the resort. This will be war. I told him, Gerald, they started it. I'm just defending myself. I'm tired of being pushed around. He told me to hold off, wait, and see if they actually filed suit. Didn't have to wait long. The next week, I got served nuisance lawsuit, all the buzzwords. Noise, wildlife safety, property values. They wanted me banned from using snowmobiles within half a mile of the easement plus damages. They had witness statements exaggerated or made up. I called Gerald. 15 grand, maybe more, to defend this if it goes to trial, he said. I could barely afford it, or I could invoke the termination clause. He made sure I was sure. I was. Took him 3 days to draft the notice. I delivered it to the resort, the HOA, and Susan. Sent copies in the mail just in case. That afternoon, my phone blew up. Susan left me 12 voicemails, each one angrier than the last. The resort manager, Todd, showed up on my porch, desperate to negotiate. I told him to take it up with the HOA. This was their doing. He offered more money, pleaded about jobs, contracts, guests. I stood firm. You've got 177 days to find another road. After that, it was like living in a soap opera. The HOA kept suing. The resort tried to mediate. The mayor, real estate folks, even the press got involved. Some folks called me a hero for property rights. Others called me a selfish bastard. Death threats, fan mail, you name it. Here's the part nobody saw coming. The resort's lawyers found out that building another road would cost millions and take years, thanks to Vermont's environmental laws. There wasn't really another way up the mountain. They tried an emergency court motion to block my termination, argued it'd destroy the business jobs, everything. Gerald and I pushed back. The contract was clear. The judge, to her credit, read the fine print, then gave the resort a year instead of 6 months before I could lock the gate. In the meantime, everybody started suing everybody else. The resort sued the HOA for interfering with business. The HOA sued back. It was absurd. Eventually, Todd called me with a real offer. If the HOA dropped their suit, would I drop the termination? They'd fix the road, pay me triple, and write into their bylaws that they couldn't take legal action against me ever again. You better believe I made them put it in writing. At the final settlement, Susan Mitchell sat at the far end of the table, looking like she'd bitten into a lemon. The attorneys read through the agreements. The resort paid up. The HOA dropped their lawsuit for good, and I got a road that was finally up to par. When it was all done, Susan told me I'd shown everyone what kind of person I was: selfish, vindictive. I told her, Susan, you sued me for riding a snowmobile. You started this. Maybe you should look in the mirror. Afterward, life got quiet again. The resort kept their access. The HOA had new leadership. Robert Chen, a reasonable guy who actually came by and apologized. We talked like neighbors. The lawsuits faded away. I rode my snowmobile when I wanted. The new road held up beautifully. I wish I could say I never saw Susan again, but I did once at the grocery store. She couldn't meet my eyes. Word was, she sold her condo and moved back to Connecticut. Honestly, I hope she finds peace. She sure didn't have it here. A funny thing happened, though. My case got talked about in some property rights groups. People started calling me, asking for advice. Even one of the HOA lawyers, months later, asked me to talk sense into another HOA in New Hampshire about to make the same mistake. I told them the story. Are you actually being harmed, or is this just about control? I asked. Because I promise you, if you start a war over something petty, you'll regret it. Maybe they listened. Over time, everything found its balance. The resort thrived. The HOA focused on snow removal instead of power trips. And I got back to what mattered: my land, my family's trail, my own peace and quiet. Looking back, I realized the lesson hit harder than I expected. Property rights. Your rights are worth defending even when it's hard, even when it's expensive. But it shouldn't have to come to that. Most conflicts don't need to become battles. If Susan had knocked on my door and just talked to me like a person, maybe we could have found a compromise. Instead, she came swinging, and I had no choice but to swing back. A year after the settlement, I sat on my porch, watching the sun drop behind the mountains, a cold beer in hand. The road below was busy with skiers heading home. I raised my bottle to the ridge, my great-grandfather's land, my father's legacy. I'd done what they'd want. I kept the land safe. The trail was still ours. Nobody was telling me what I could or couldn't do on my own property. So now let me ask you, where's the line between standing up for yourself and just making life harder for everyone? What would you have done? Ever had someone try to push you off your own land or tell you how to live on it? I'd love to hear how you handled it: right, wrong, or somewhere in between. Go ahead, tell your story. I'll be here on my porch, beer in hand, enjoying the mountain just like my family always has.